At some point in the early 2000s, a group of Hollywood scriptwriters were at an after-work drink and decided to see who could come up with the most awful pitch for a movie. Included among them was producer Craig Berenson, who at the time was working for DreamWorks. He came up with an idea called Venom. Fast forward a few years and this idea is now called Snakes on a Plane, and it was the fad of the moment on the internet. There were fan trailers, posters, DC Comics released a miniseries about the film. I mean, the hype was unbelievable. Hell, on release, the film even cracked IMDb's top 250 list. Then just as quickly as it came, it was gone. Forgotten in a heartbeat by the very people that had clamoured for it to be released. The people that had made sure that the film had had the reshoots needed to take it from a PG-13 to an R rating in the States. And yet did this film, one of the first films to receive so much publicity that the studio felt that it would pretty much be able to skip traditional TV and radio advertising and rely mostly on the internet and word of mouth, deserve to slither off into oblivion, or should it squeeze its way into our hearts? Let's take a look. Now, the plot is far more complicated than it needs to be. Upon witnessing a murder, a hole in the air who aspires to the charisma and presence of Slough on a wet Wednesday afternoon, played by something called a Nathan Phillips, is under the protection of FBI agent Samuel L. Jackson, who is taking him by plane from Hawaii to LA to give evidence in court. Upon finding out about this development, said murderer has a brainwave and decides the best way to deal with this is to fill the plane with venomous snakes and allow nature to take its course. Now, I will admit there are roughly a million ways more efficient than this, and the lunacy of the idea is even mentioned in the film. But I've heard of worse ideas for blockbusters, and you have to give credit to the idea. In a plane that's over the ocean and midway between land points, there's nowhere to run. And pretty much everybody's scared of snakes. Sadly, just because an idea sounds awesome on paper, that doesn't mean it's going to work on film. And just off the top of my head, I can think of a better idea. A zoo is transporting a collection of snakes to another zoo where a breeding program is being established, and owing to an accident during loading, the snakes escape and wreak havoc upon the plane. How hard was that? Because then you also take out one of this film's other weaknesses. It has way too many locations. A film like this needs a sense of claustrophobia, a sense of having nowhere to run, which this film doesn't. And as the film has saddled itself with the stupid taking out a witness plot, it has quite a few scenes of the FBI doing investigative work, which means that we never really feel as trapped as we're supposed to. Also, the snakes are very polite and attack in waves, meaning that there's plenty of time for dialogue and character development. Neither of which are things that I wanted from this film, and neither of which are things that this film does terribly well. I mean, this film sets up some characters that seem like they're going somewhere, only to not bother. A champion kickboxer who does nothing. A germophobic rapper who gets miraculously cured after a 5-second talk. An annoying character with a dog in a bag who even the snakes seem to want to avoid. Still, at least they managed to kill off the snobby Brit, so 1 star. Another issue is with the snakes themselves. Not only do they all seem to have borrowed their vision from the Predator, most of them are made from bad CGI, and well, they're snakes. They hiss, they bite, some spit venom, and that's about it. After an awesome initial scene where they kill off enough extras to make the Lannisters blush, they seem content to just hang out and wait for the survivors to tear each other apart. They certainly seem to know their place is not in the first class cabin, which they avoid at all costs. Now, the film does have some positives. Its song, Snakes on a Plane, Bring It by Cobra Starship, managed to reach number 32 on the alternative songs chart in the US. And of course, there is the man himself, Samuel L. Jackson, who pretty much single-handedly manages to make this look like a feature film and not the straight-to-DVD fodder it so clearly seems to be. He delivers an amazingly intense performance, and he delivers the film's one interesting line with such passion that it was voted the 55th of the 100 greatest movie lines by Premiere in 2007. Now, interestingly, when the film played on TV, the networks dubbed over all the foul language, turning it into the awe-inspiring, "I have had it with these monkey-fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane." Why couldn't the film have been about that plane instead? But sadly, back on the non-monkey-fighting snakes plane, it definitely overstays its welcome, running at 106 minutes when it needed to hang at around the 90-minute mark to ensure that its already paper-thin premise didn't get stretched so far that it shattered into a million tiny slithering pieces. But even before the film was released, there was the traditional sign of a turkey that's about to be foisted upon an unwilling public. The film wasn't screened for critics, but even those who went and saw the film in their own time were confused. Originally supposed to be a PG-13, the film was reshot to gain a higher rating, but the reshoot served no real purpose except to give the film jarring shifts in tone from a comedy to a horror, and there's no real gore to speak of. and I do feel that they could have been removed again to no real effect on the film. In fact, it might even have made it slightly better to have a consistent tone running through. And no, having a couple graphically join the Mile High Club doesn't help your film. Made on a budget of $32 million, the film made $62 million and currently holds 58% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, the film did open at the #1 spot, narrowly beating out Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, and then promptly fell to 6th place the next week with a drop in ticket sales of more than 50%. I can't help but feel that it would have made significantly more money had it kept its original rating rather than inserting obvious reshoots. So, should we remember snakes on a plane? No! God no! There's nothing here. It's a bloated mess that outstays its welcome. The tone varies wildly between comedy and horror, meaning that it succeeds at neither. It sets up characters that it never uses, and beyond one decent attack scene, even wastes the snakes themselves. If you want a better example of a film created, nurtured and loved by the internet, then watch Deadpool. But this, forget it at once. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to write a film about some monkey fighting snakes. Alright guys, so this has been a Should You Remember. Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Do you have any films that you want me to cast my critical eye over? Either way, comment below, let me know. I'm Daniel, this has been a Should You Remember. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe.